Hey there, welcome to our very first podcast called the Kris and Sam Answer Ma'am Show. I'm Kris Daniel and
I'm Samantha Hickey.
we're here at the lovely offices of our brokerage, JD and Associates, here in lovely Chesterfield, Michigan. We're just going to have some fun with these podcasts, chatting about real estate and what's going on in your world and our world, and help you with anything you need. That is what the Answer Ma'am is all about.
That's right.
So first of all, Sam, I've been on hiatus for about a year now. I've been rehabbing a 19-room farmhouse on the lake. It was a probate deal. Of course, I was the realtor. And a lot of issues, a lot of problems. The buyer was actually an American citizen living in Canada with no credit history. So that's going to be a future podcast. I just want to tease you with that one because it is a story and a half. It took a year and a half to close that deal. But anyway, on to the biggest question everybody's got this year, and that is what the heck is going on with commissions? Sam, everyone wonders why this even happened. What was the reason for the NAR litigation and the lawsuit, and how did it end up?
So it all started a couple years ago. A bunch of people got together and filed a class action lawsuit, and they named NAR, the National Association of Realtors.
Okay.
So what they did is they filed the suit claiming that they didn't have any option to negotiate commission. They were paying the listing brokerage and the buyer's brokerage, even though the buyer's brokerage was negotiating against them.
Mm-hmm.
They felt that they didn't have a choice. They were forced to pay this hefty commission. So NAR ended up doing a settlement, and they said, well, commission is negotiable. It always has been.
It always has been.
It always has been.
Especially here in Michigan. We were not part of this suit.
Exactly. It was primarily other brokerages in different states. So as a result of the settlement, what they decided is we cannot list cooperating compensation, meaning a listing brokerage cannot offer a buyer brokerage compensation through the MLS, the multiple listing service, which is the platform that we all use to disseminate information about new listings. So we cannot put it on the MLS, but we can call each other, talk to each other, and negotiate it just off MLS.
So how does that look on a listing these days? So in the past, when an agent would open up a listing, it would say exactly what the commission schedule was. And remember, it's negotiable. 6% is not written in law. You can negotiate your commission with your broker and your buyer's agent. But we're going to get to that in a minute because that's a whole nother story as far as how your buyer agent is handled. But so what you're saying here basically is in the typical listing that an agent would see, it would show you exactly how much you would make as a buyer's agent. Because remember, there's two sides to every deal. That 6% or 5% or 7% commission is split between the real estate agent that lists your property and the buyer's agent that brings in buyer to your property for the sale. So normally it would be split, say, let's take the 6% as an example, 3% to the listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent. No longer will it say on the listing, which will be obviously visible to buyers and sellers and agents, that 3% or that 2.5% to the buyer's agent. So what Sam is saying is we can communicate prior to showing houses and find out if that seller is offering me, the buyer's agent, a commission. Now, advice to the wise would be what, Sam? As far as a listing goes, is the seller. What should they have set up in that listing agreement? What should they be ready to agree to in order to attract more business and more buyers?
So when we talk about commission being negotiable, it means that a seller can go to JD and Associates and we charge 6%, because we do. They can also go to another brokerage, we're not going to say names, and they could charge 5%. So the idea is it's negotiable because you can shop different brokerages. Now, however, me as an experienced listing agent, I charge 6%. There's a lot that goes into a transaction. My job is to make it easy for you. That being said, when I talk to my sellers, I charge 6%, and then of that 6%, I'm offering 3% to another brokerage or agent that brings in the buyer. because there's a lot of work that they have to do as well.
Right, and this may sound a little confusing, but we're going to try and simplify it. So Sam is saying up front, she will sit with you as the seller and make sure that you understand, number one, you're going to attract more buyer's agents if they know
Yes.
there's a commission available to them. Right now, we've been at this for a few months since it took place in July and August, and we've seen buyer's agents shying away from those listings that don't offer compensation. Now, there's other ways to do it, in what's called concessions, but that's probably another episode.
Yeah, that's getting into the weeds a little bit.
We're going to keep it simple. So what Sam's saying is she's got that set up already in advance to let those buyer's agents know that they're going to be paid 3% from the 6% that you, the seller, are paying at the close time. Now, something very tricky could happen, and you've got to make sure that you've got an answer man like Sam drawing up your contracts, because some brokerages are checking boxes that would actually charge you an extra 3%
for a total
of 9%. So
Mhm.
the contracts are tricky. We're not going to try and explain those to you. You just have to know that your agent knows what's going on.
Absolutely.
So in that contract verbiage, you will see check boxes and language that will be explained to you at the time of your listing agreement or your buyer's agent agreement that will let you know what you're going to pay out of pocket. So buyer's agents, on the other hand, need to be willing to do what, Sam? If we don't have that full 6% commission available to the buyer's agent.
So kind of getting into the other part of the NAR settlement, every buyer has to be under contract with the buyer's agent before a property is shown. Before you can even go inside the home, you have to have this contract signed. Now, the contract doesn't have to be a year or 6 months. It can be for one day, it can be for one property, or traditionally, a
Basically
year.
Suits your needs for the client.
Absolutely. In that contract, we talk about compensation. So in a scenario, I'm a buyer agent working with a buyer. In my contract, I have that I will get compensated 3%. Now, if the seller or the listing agent offers me 3%, the buyer doesn't pay me anything because 3 minus 3 is 0. Now, let's say the buyer agrees to pay the 3% in the contract. The seller is only offering 2%, let's say. Prior to me showing the home, I'm going to reach out to that listing agent and say, hey, how much compensation is being offered? They say 2%. I go to my buyer. I say, hey, they're only offering 2. Well, 3 minus 2 is 1. So my buyer would be on the hook to pay the 1%.
And it's well worth it, folks. You can't navigate these new waters without a trusting, knowledgeable agent like Kris Daniel and Sam Hickey. So, in a nutshell, everything's really the same. It's just a matter of, we've always had a negotiable commission schedule. It's never been set in stone. There are no laws dictating how that contract is written. Every part of the contract is going to be explained to you to make sure you understand who's paying who and how much you're paying.
And I also want to add that, let's say in that scenario, the seller's only offering 2%. The buyer had agreed to pay 3%. I tell my buyer before we go see the home. So if they decide, oh, I just can't afford that extra 1%, it's up to you, the buyer, to not see it. Now, think about that on the flip side. If you're a seller not offering out 3%, you just shrunk down your buyer pool. That's less exposure, less activity, less offers, and possibly a lower sales price.
So what I want to finish with today is the psychology of that. In the past, it's automatic. It's been 6% or 5% split between the two agents, and the seller has paid that amount. So some people may want to take advantage of this settlement agreement and say, well, I don't want to pay you that 3%. I can find a listing agent that's only going to do it for 3%.
And they could,
and
because
they can.
It's negotiable.
It's negotiable. But what will happen, like Sam just said, you are definitely going to reduce your visibility to the 7,000 plus buyers agents in the Detroit metro area, 33,000 in the state of Michigan. So we all work as one company, basically, with the National Association of Realtors. When you hire us, you're really hiring 7,000 agents in the metro area, but you want to hire us because
We
We've
know
got
our
Sam, the answer
contracts.
man, here
Yeah.
today. So that kind of concludes our first episode of what's going on with the NAR settlement and what you need to know as a buyer or seller in today's market. We hope that you're going to call. And what's our number here, Sam, at JD and Associates?
It is 586-273-2500.
And you can ask for Kris or Sam, and we'll get to you right away with those answers you need to get going with your listing or your search for that perfect dream home. So now the favorite part of my show, we have a jingle.
Brand new jingle.
Brand new jingle. Sam said to me, Kris, we got to have a jingle for our show.
We do.
And we do. And it goes like this. When you have an answer. There you go, our first plug.
Ah, jeez.
It's going really good. When you need an answer right away, call Kris or Sam now, don't delay. Kris and Sam will make a plan to buy or sell your home today. What do you think, Sam? Call 586-273-2500. Operators are standing by. See you next time. Bye-bye.